watching her iPad, and we are on our way to the hospital. So about that was about an hour ago, right? About an hour ago, I was eating, and I don't know, I just had a gush. I had a cramp, a strong cramp, and then a gush of fluid. But it wasn't like a big gush like my water broke the first time with my daughter, but it felt like TMI, I'm about to say a TMI moment, but it felt like a gush of like period blood or whatever that you would normally get. But and my ladies, you know how that feels. But I hurried up and looked, and it was kind of like milky. So I stood up and I went to the bathroom, and then as I was walking to the bathroom, it just kind of slowly was like leaking, but I could tell that it was water at that point. So I called my mom, and then I called the doctor, and then they basically told me, they put me on the phone with the triage nurse, and they just told me that it could be your mucus plug, along with it just be leaking amniotic fluid. But either way, you just want to go ahead and come in, so get everything and come on in. So that is what we're cramp wise, I'm not super crampy, but I'm having like spurts of cramps. Yeah, so a little bit nervous, but we had our game plan though. So we made it to the car, we made it out here. We're about 25 minutes away, 30 minutes away. What? No, I'm saying our house from the hospital, like normally where we live, but now we're about 5 minutes away from the hospital and pulling up. So this is the beginning. Hopefully, Reagan, we see you in a few hours. Like, no, that would be kind of, I don't know, I just don't know. But we said our prayer, so we hope to see you whenever God blesses us to see your beautiful face, and your sister will see you soon. Riley, you want to be a big sister? Reagan, you gonna go get Reagan? She's like, yeah, sure. Could this be my last day of being pregnant? I don't know. Okay, bye guys. Hello.
So as you can see, Brittany is going through some contractions right now. She's about 3 to 4 centimeters dilated with baby Reagan. And it's looking like, as we thought on the 14th, her water definitely broke. And we are looking to have the baby tonight, so they say. So, maybe early morning tonight.
But they're about she said they're about a few minutes apart. And I'm about to get on the bouncy wall to kind of actively labor. Just kind of putting the pain in my head and kind of like mentally getting through it. But they're not horrible, just because they're not lasting very long. But I can definitely feel them coming on. I do have to get up and use the restroom in a minute, so I'm about to do that. But we're in triage, we're not in our actual room, because apparently there's a lot of babies being born today, or yesterday into today. So they just switched nurses. My best friend Toy just left for her shift being done. So it was good to have her in and around and joking with me. But yeah, so that's where we're at right now. So we will see.
Here we go. Brittany is feeling the contractions and going through active labor. That is what it's called. Just trying to essentially do some exercise to prepare.
I think these things are hooked up right. They're not.
She's on the bouncy ball right now. I would show you, but it's a little bit too much exposure.
Hold on, don't pull it down.
Oh, I thought you said the machine. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're okay.
Oh.
What time Toya come back in?
In the morning, 7. Oh my God.
Just keep breathing. Friday or Thursday, I guess, the 13th or the 14th, excuse me. Do you have any hair ties?
I mean, I can do it without a tie.
There's a lot of other people around. Heather.
I'm not sure. I think there's another maybe one or two.
It's pretty quiet. The lady said that you should be in the room soon.
Yeah.
She said you should get a room
Who
soon.
said that?
The nurse.
Who? Oh, the one I saw?
Yeah, the one that was in here. The lady was asking at the front what room you were in. She said she don't have one yet, but she'll be getting one soon. Why did they bring me in here?
Because I need you in here, like, I'm going through labor and you're just not in here. They had to get it approved, but I'm in here by myself. Okay. Come here.
What are you doing? Getting in the bed? You can squeeze me, I don't care.
So this is just going to be us kind of recapping on the portion that is skipped in between. So there was a lot of people having babies that night. So they put us in triage, and due to COVID regulations and everything like that, there were, Daryl couldn't accompany me in the room until we actually got to our labor and delivery room, which was kind of upsetting at first. Especially once I started to actually labor, as you guys could see in the video. Going to labor, when I first got there, they did check me to make sure that was my water that had broke, which it was. At first, it was just kind of like oozing out when we were at home, but then it just kind of kept happening. So it could have been my mucus plug. It could have been a lot of different things, or not really a lot. I'm pretty sure it was my mucus plug, they said. And then when I got there, I did have another burst, which was a little bit bigger. And then we finally did get moved up to our labor and delivery room. And that's kind of where all the fun started. My contractions, they checked me. I was 3 to 4 centimeters dilated. Now, the only issue I did have was they only really checked me one time. So that one time that they checked versus me having my daughter, they checked me like super, super consistently, which, it wasn't a ton of people having babies the night that I had my daughter. So that was part of the difference. The contractions are bad, but they're not like killing me. I could still talk through them. I could breathe through them, everything like that. Now, about 30 minutes after that video of me bouncing on the active labor ball, or the bouncy ball, it was excruciating. So I knew something had changed pretty much from like really feeling the pain and being able to push through it to the point where I was like, I had to be close to being fully dilated. Now, I did not want to mentally go through that, because going into it, my birth plan was what?
Epidural.
Yes, it was an epidural, and I have always stood by epidural. I've always never in my life said I wanted to give birth without an epidural, and I am not good with pain, so at least I thought I wasn't. I really don't still think I am after this experience, but it was excruciating. So to say the least, I really was hoping and praying for the epidural. So as we get farther along, the contractions I could see were going off the charts. Daryl said that they were like off the charts compared to, I guess there were boxes with other people in triage and their contractions, I guess.
Right. So on the monitor that the nurse was looking at, you can see the different triage sections. And so as she was saying, as the pain became more excruciating, you know, from my point of view, you kind of looking at it like, you know, is Brittany exaggerating, or where is this really going?
No exaggeration.
There was no exaggeration. There was a point when, you know, just like a typical bar graph, you see the line go up and down. I mean, it went literally straight up. And so at that point, I knew, okay, yeah, she's definitely fully dilating at this point, and we need to find a room and prepare to have a baby sooner than later.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I really didn't think about the like how far I was dilated until the pain. I really actually didn't think about it until it got so bad, which I'm going to say in a minute. But when we did, you know, when I did start feeling them, the contractions felt like I could not sit still. Like right after that video, and we cut the video off after I was on the bouncy ball, I literally had to grab Daryl and pull him. I didn't feel like this before with Riley. You know, I was induced, so I could feel the pain, I could feel the Pitocin, like all of that was causing me to contract. It was a different feeling. So this time I felt like once they really kicked in, I could feel her moving downward. I felt also I felt like I had to get up out of the bed. Like I was turned backwards on the bed. I would do anything when they did come. Like it just felt like I had to scream, or I was coming out of my body. It just really felt like I was coming out of my body. So it got to the point where I started asking for all the drugs. I was like, give me the morphine, give me the fentanyl, please give me whatever you have to do. Because the problem was the nurse, she was a newer nurse. She wasn't new to labor and delivery, she told me. She said, I am new to where we were delivering at. So she was new to the actual hospital, which wasn't my preference. And if I could go back, I probably would ask for a different nurse. But she was great. But you know, I think that did have a lot to do time-wise when there was multiple deliveries happening, multiple people going into labor, not enough staff. You know, it was a great hospital, but I just don't think they were prepared for as many people giving birth that day.
And another piece of it too, you got to remember this is during COVID.
Right.
So just like, you know, I couldn't go into triage the entire time, you know, I'm sure their staff numbers are pretty much, you know, a little bit lower. It's a little bit harder to, you know, get into rooms. You have to have extra precautions as far as cleaning labor and delivery rooms. So it wasn't so much of a knock against the organization or the company, but it was just more so of this is the cards that we were dealt given the situation.
Right.
And we had to work through it.
Exactly. So that definitely was something to get through, but we did it. So we finally did get a labor and delivery room, thank goodness. And I remember with them rolling me up, that was where I kind of like blacked out at this point. Not really blacked out, but mentally I was not prepared. I kind of knew going into it that this might end without me getting an epidural, but I was not ready to accept that. I was so nervous because I knew that there was something going on, and I like I said, this is my second baby, but the first one with everything happening naturally, like natural water break, you know, not being forced or not being put on Pitocin or anything like that. So it was a different feeling, and I was nervous going into it. We did get rolled up, and they were moving very fast because at that point I was like screaming, and I was in the hallway. I was moving, being like just twisted. I can't even tell you. But on the scale of 1 to 10, being rolled up there, it was already at a 15. So I knew something was happening, and I was trying to hold it off because they kept saying, you know, as soon as we get you up to your room, they're going to be there for your epidural. So I said, okay, you know, that's fine, whatever. And she kept trying to tell me, you know, I don't want to give you the or they don't typically do morphine. With my daughter, I did have morphine shots put into my legs. So I just typically said that because that was all I knew. But she did say we could get you some fentanyl probably. But then she changed it and said, due to you about to get the epidural, let's just wait because I'm going to get you that epidural. So I said, okay, fine. I bet everything on that epidural. And when we got up to the room, the anesthesiologist came in the room. They asked Daryl to leave because due to COVID, this time there could only be the doctors and myself present while getting the epidural, which was fine. So right after the contraction passed, they told Daryl to, he was already stepping out in the hallway, just waiting for us to get the epidural. The anesthesiologist was right in my reach, like literally had the needle out, had everything prepared. And when I tell you, the nurse told me as soon as this contraction passes, I want you to sit up and, you know, turn front ways, ball up, and then we'll get ready to give you the epidural. And it was like, okay, great. I was in a lot of pain, and then as soon as I started bending over, a huge contraction was coming where I could not sit still. I almost had to just pass out almost. And I knew at that point I started to pee. Like I just told her, I'm peeing, something is happening. So at that point, the anesthesiologist looked at me and she said, now is it the pee that you're feeling, like pressure? Or is it pee or is it pressure? Because if it's pressure, you know, we're going to have to check you to see how far dilated you are. Mind you, I had only been checked probably like 3 to 4 hours ago, like, and that was due to, you know, everything being so busy. So I knew that I was probably, and this is my second baby, so everything was moving faster. So I tried to hide it. I don't know why I tried. It was just a mechanism that happened. First response that my body told them was, no, it was just a pee. I promise, it was just a pee. The pee has passed. I couldn't control it. It was almost like, it felt like a water was breaking again or something, even though that's not true, but that's what it felt like to me. After the pee passed, she said, okay, the lady started coming over with the epidural, and as soon as she walked over, I mean, as soon as, it felt like all hell was breaking loose, excuse my language. It really did. Like, it felt like I was about to poop on the table. It felt like I was about to give birth to my daughter as well, and it happened all at once. So as soon as I felt that feeling of the other contraction happening, I felt like I had to push, and I just fell out on the bed. I said, okay, you need to check me. At this point, I knew the epidural was probably not happening. As soon as I laid down again, after the anesthesiologist looked at me, she knew, and she basically was waving goodbye, like, good luck. She told me good luck as soon as I laid down. So I said, oh wow. So the nurse checked me, and as soon as she put her hand there, like literally 2 seconds, she said, oh yeah, you're having this baby. And I screamed. I said, was that an epidural? And it was, she said yes. And I started screaming no, like somebody was trying to murder me. Like, I just knew that this was not my birth about to happen without an epidural. Like, I don't think you guys understand that I was not ready for this. I was not ready for it. So right then and there, it just happened. So mind you, the doctor is not in the room. There's two nurses in there who were not ready, because they were just, you know, they were getting the room prepared for an epidural, and then after that getting ready for, you know, it to pretty much slow down. Didn't slow down. Everything was pretty fast after that. Mind you, Daryl is still in the hallway, so right. I'll let him kind of finish this off.
So from my point of view, they tell me, like Brittany said, oh, she's gonna get epidural, you have to step up because it's a new COVID procedure. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm texting her mom in the waiting area. She's like, oh yeah, she's finally getting an epidural, everything's going fine. You know, it's finally a relief. She can kind of, you know, smooth through this, because we've seen, you know, a birth through an epidural before. And so, in hindsight, I look at my phone. We literally, I want to say I went back there at like 9:35, if I'm not mistaken, and within 10 minutes the baby, you know, was pretty much here. And so
it was probably like 9:45, because she was born at 9:59.
Right, so it was about 9:45, and then baby was born at 9:59. So I'm texting. It's about 9:45, like she said. By the time I come back in the room, from my point of view, I'm like, oh, everything's good. They're telling me you can come back. No one's telling me, oh, yeah, you know, you're about to have a baby. So I'm coming in smiling like, ooh, what a relief. My hand is swollen, basically, from all the squeezing. You know, you're uncomfortable with your wife crying and being uncomfortable and, you know, throughout the labor. I walk through the door, and the first thing I see, well, actually, I'll walk back a little bit further than that. I'm walking down the hall, and the first thing that I hear is someone screaming. And I'm like, oh, somebody else
and
is
it
having
didn't sound like my typical scream.
It didn't sound like a typical scream. So you're like, oh, well, someone's definitely going through labor. Like, this isn't just the Brittany scream of uncomfortness. So we walk down the hall. I look. I'm like, well, which room is it in? And I see our door, and I'm like, couldn't be coming through our door. I hear one more scream. I said, oh, that's Brittany for sure.
Yes.
So I start walking fast. I come in the room and I literally see Reagan's head is crowning already. And so from my standpoint, you have to understand, I'm thinking it's, you know, we're having an epidural the whole time. The baby is literally here. So they rush me. And from there, they say, hey, grab her leg. We're about to have this baby now.
Mind you, he didn't plan to be that close.
Right.
In that area, you
right.
know, he wanted to be up more near my head, which is understandable.
In the time before that, that's how it was. I didn't mind being close, but it was, you know, more so of like, oh, you're not just on the outside of her leg, like
he was on the inside,
here.
having to hold it up.
On the inside and had to hold it up because again, the doctor just, you know, finished the surgery, and so she wasn't even aware. And then
the doctor wasn't in there yet.
Yeah, the doctor. I beat the doctor in.
Mind you, let me tell you this: how he's in there at this point. I'm feeling like I'm dying. On top of that, I know that the doctor is not there. The nurse tells me, and I don't think you like this is it was very serious at this point. Like I was nervous, he was nervous. He wasn't in there at first, so I really was nervous. And then the nurse tells me, don't push. And mind you, I'm going through these contractions that are probably 10 seconds apart. I'm going through, and they were 30 seconds apart when they rolled me up. And when we got situated in the room, so that should tell you how fast everything was going. On top of that, when I felt the contraction, I could feel her coming out. Like I could feel her coming down. Once I felt that, I also felt in the back, this is TMI, but hey, that's why you're on this video. On the back part of my like rectum, I could feel like if you're in the middle of a poop, and everybody who's given birth naturally probably, or even with an epidural, you know what that pressure feels like. But that pressure along with a baby coming out right here, and then there's feeling like you have to poop right here, it felt like I was just not me. Like I don't know what was happening. I don't know how. I was praying to Jesus. I said, Jesus, God, Mary, Joseph, please help me. I was screaming to the point where my screams didn't sound even like screams. They sounded like an animal, like
yeah,
like it was
like
bad.
Literally the most uncomfortable sight you've ever seen.
Yeah, and
like
to hear.
Yeah, and like she said, it was, you know, again, more so you just weren't prepared for it.
Right.
So
mentally, it was not there that I was going to have to do this.
Right. Like,
with no medicine.
I vividly remember walking in and seeing that, and then I walk up, they say, you know, they're telling her, try not to push, try not to push.
No, they said don't push.
They're telling her don't push, and they're telling her literally, if you don't want us to deliver the baby and you want the doctor to, then don't push. But she literally, clear as day, she says, I can't, the baby is coming out. And literally, the next thing I know, like I said, the head was already crowning. And so I remember looking at that when Riley was being born. So I knew, like, oh, yeah, it's game time. But the next, like, 10 seconds,
she was here.
The baby was literally coming out. Like, she couldn't hold it.
It was no holding it. It was, I could care less what they said. And the only reason I really did was because I have seen in movies and things where they tell you don't push and it's for a reason. I couldn't tell you if that nurse was saying don't push because she didn't want to deliver it for real, or it was something medical like, hey, don't push because this is not the time to push. So that was also scary for me, because even looking at it back now and replaying it in my head, that was what I was thinking. Like, I want Reagan to be safe, but at this same time, I couldn't help you if you wanted me not to push. It was coming out, it was mid out. I just knew I was pooping all over the table. At this moment, the doctor had walked in. She ran in. Mind you, I've been talking, this is the doctor I see like all the time. This is the doctor that she happened to be on call, thank goodness. And I was just happy to have her as my doctor because, you know, most of the time it could be anybody that you're seeing in that practice, but I saw her the most. And she as soon as she walks in, she says, "I can't believe you're doing this with no epidural." And that's how serious it was, because I was already doing it. Like, it wasn't that she was there waiting for me to give birth, or I was basically giving birth before she could do anything. So, "I can't believe you're doing this with no epidural" was the first thing she said when she walked in the room. She ran in the room. And because I had been telling her the entire pregnancy, I wanted epidural, sign me up. I told the lady when I first got to the hospital, yeah, whatever we need to do to get put on the list, because I know it's other people, tell the anesthesiologist to come see me. And when I did finally was able to push, it was so hard to push because my legs like just automatically wanted to keep closing. But that's when Daryl came in and the other nurse, and then they had me hold underneath my thighs. And she was able to come out. It was probably 4 pushes. Yeah. I could remember each push specifically. The first push, she was moving downward. Second push was her shoulders. Third push was everybody saying, "Okay, look down, look down." And the fourth push, she was out, and I remember that feeling of her being out. I remember seeing the gray baby come out with all of the discharge, or whatever is on the baby exactly. I don't know the exact term, but I remember her coming out being so happy that feeling that was so tough coming out was out. It was a sense of relief for me. Then right after they gave her to me, the placenta was a little bit stuck, which was another tough feeling, and tough for him to watch. He almost passed out.
When I was just
he literally almost passed out. Like, and he's not very squeamish of blood or anything like that, but he basically was watching so much that.
Of the blood, but it was the struggle, and then it was just lifting it up.
And she had her hand all the way in. He could see her hand, and she was just saying that it was stuck. She kept having to kind of like pull, and it was right after the baby came out.
It was a lot going on.
And then he was like, you know, I'm sure he had his knees locked. It was just a lot going on. The nurse was like, "Are you okay?" He tried to hop up. She told him, "Just sit back down."
Sit down. I'm in the midst of, you know, her pushing. Like she said, I'm literally pressing my body against her. And Brittany, you know, she's not the weakest link out there. She's a fitness, you know, guru. And so she's basically locking me out and pushing me. I literally was off balance at one point. And so that, combined with anxiety or just being a little bit anxious, I guess, with everything that was going on and thrown out of everything, definitely made me sit down for a couple minutes. So
yeah, it was a toughie, but we made it through, and Reagan is here. This is not to scare anybody without getting an epidural, but this was me going into it thinking I was getting one, and instantly, in a matter of seconds, being told I wasn't getting one. I mean, when she told me I wasn't, I literally was like screaming like they sentenced me life in prison.
Right.
Like, it was no go. Like, I was mad. I was so mad. But
and just to give somebody, you know, who might be worried context, when I tell you Brittany is like has been so adamant, even with Riley, like, if it's one thing I know when we talk about birthing plan, epidural.
Yeah, epidural.
So it's not impossible to see Brittany go through it. If you are wondering, like, or getting nervous, don't. If Brittany can do it, anyone can do it. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it.
And something, yeah, I agree. Something that the nurse did tell me was, and this really helped me at the beginning part of those contractions, not at the end. Contractions are only, what was it, 1 minute?
She said contractions only last for 1 minute, and you can do anything
for 1 minute long.
We will never forget.
And never forget that. Anybody I've talked to who had a natural birth and no epidural, they all tell me it's a mental thing. I don't know how mental it was for me, but looking back, because a lot of people plan with doulas and different things like that, and they mentally prepare you for that, and over months, and I didn't have months to prepare for that, to mentally get prepared. But at least I know maybe for a third baby 3 to 5 years down the line that, you know, this is something that I did accomplish, and it's something to look back on. Like I said, if you're nervous, don't be nervous. You can do it. So I'm gonna skip to this next part of the video where Reagan is here. Bye.
Was that included?
Probably.
Yeah, that's your call.
How does 372 sound? Aaron? Tell me when. That's good. Food first. I don't know what this is.
That was rude, wasn't it? What's her name?
Reagan.
Reagan? What's your other daughter's name?
Riley.
Oh, I love those. Girl has some plans, huh?
Yeah, big plans.
Finishing up, but I just want to let y'all know that we're not sure yet. It just happened. I mean, it's going to happen. You know, we want to really prepare for it.
Reagan is here.
Reagan is here.
No
Almost
epidural.
passed out.
He almost passed out. Me, no epidural. That was never the plan. I'm shivering because it's cold. And just...
She was a trooper. When I told y'all she took it, I went out thinking, oh, they're done with the epidural. I heard some screaming. I said, well, that can't be Brittany. I got a little bit closer. They said, come here. The baby's coming.
She was coming. Happened so fast.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Did I poop?
Huh?
Did I poop my tail?
Huh?
Did I?
No.
I'm just going to finish up doing this stuff, and then I'm going to put her right on your chest.
Okay.
I'm going to put a diaper on her so she won't pee on you again.
Okay.
Alright.
Now we hold
Slide her right on in there. Did you even get a look at her?
Hi, baby.
Hi.
Say hello.
Okay.
Hi.
So she's... Welcome to the world, Reagan. Reagan Rose.
Yeah, I had to grab her phone. Give me 1 second.
Wow, you made my night very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
That was... I am so sorry we couldn't get you that epidural. I did everything in my power.
I know you did. Say hi to Daddy.
She said,
This was probably the worst pain that I have ever. All the way.